Hi there, welcome back, Geoff Coughlin. So we're all masked up now, ready for the dark earth to go on. As your blue undersides were done, and we did the chipping that you may have seen in the previous video. So those areas are masked out, and now we're ready to add the matte dark earth, which is matte 29 in the Humbrol acrylic range, as you can see here. And I've already mixed that up now with Humbrol thinners, acrylic thinners, to the same consistency that we had before. So it's about 50-50, and you've got that nice kind of milky consistency thing going on with the paint. So we'll just get that into our airbrush, and we're good with about 17 psi again. So that should do to start with. Okay, and then we're just looking to lay this on in a nice smooth coat. There we go. And we put that So as you can see, that's going quite nicely there, to say the least. That's really good. So I'm very happy with that. As we speak, just trying to get a handhold on this just at the mo. So I grab some of the masking tape underneath, and then we can just finish off that spraying. You sort of spray directly over the masking tape, which means that you lay the paint down nice and evenly. If you spray at this sort of angle, then you tend to get a build-up along the masking tape line, demarcation line, and then you just need to micromesh that back if that were to happen. What's interesting, I think, a couple of points here, I think, to kind of come out of this for me, and that is, just bear with me a second, just get that finished off, is that remember that we added our hairspray, didn't we, over the silver, and we're spraying our acrylic mix directly over that, although it's been a day since that was applied. And it's gone on really smoothly, so there's been no kind of issues there with reacting or anything of that sort. So that's all kind of good news so far. Yeah, so just a couple of little areas to touch up there, and then we're good to go. So we'll just get the hair dryer out, just do a little bit of application of that, just to kind of start the kind of going off process, the drying process, and then I'll leave that in fact until tomorrow, and then come back and we can apply the matte mid stone, which is 225, which is coming next. Hi, welcome back, Geoff Coughlin. So finally, there we go, we're all masked up and good to go to apply the matte mid stone from the Humbrol acrylic range. So that's what's coming up next. And yeah, so exactly the same process as we've done for the other colours, looking for that 50-50 mix or thereabouts, and we can get on and spray that over. And then we're going to get to the really interesting bit for me, which is a bit more weathering. I'll show you one or two little techniques I've got for fading down these kind of desert schemes, which look so much better, I think, once they've got a bit more wear and tear into them. And then there'll be loads of little finishing touches to that weathering later on. But what we've got to do next is get on the final main camo colour, which is the Humbrol Mid Stone. Okay, so our mid stone is all mixed up in the usual 50-50. Let's get that into the airbrush and start getting it laid down. Okay. So if you're a little bit careful when you're applying this, what you can do is try and be a little bit careful with the airbrush, and you get slightly more solid colour in the panels towards the centre, not entirely, but just means you can leave almost in effect like a bit of pre-shading with the dark earth. It needs to fiddle about a bit, but we'll see how we go at the end. As you get a lot of this fading, you can just be quite, not exactly random, but you can certainly, you don't have to be too, you know, careful about how much you put down, because it's all going to look a bit mottled and a bit kind of weathered and so on, and it's just a useful way of starting that process while you're spraying on the main colours. Okay, certainly getting there. Okay, there we go, didn't take too long. Little bits under there. Okay, so all we need to do now is the canopy, and we're there. Try and spray this from right above, so on the closing part, the joining surfaces of the canopy, those might hopefully still show a bit of the interior green. See, just like that, you can just see the interior green around that kind of leading edge there. Okay, cool. And finally just the windscreen, and we're there. Okay, so there we go. That's the main camo done. So all we'll do is just leave that alone now, I think, for the moment, and come back to that. You see, look, just when you think it's all done, you miss a little piece here. How annoying would that be? Clean up the airbrush and then you miss the very last bit there. You probably already spotted that, didn't you? I know. And you're thinking, oh, he's forgotten a bit, he's forgotten a bit. Hey ho. There you go. Well, we're done now. Okay, so we'll leave that to clear up, and then we'll come back and, yeah, start to have a look a bit more weathering. Welcome back, Geoff Coughlin. So now you're finding me at the quite tedious process, which is to remove all the masking tape. So we're nearly there now, and just using some tweezers we can get rid of the remaining pieces of that. But what I hope you'll be able to see, looking at the film, is just how well the masking system has worked. So if I just bring this in close, a couple of things. Firstly, by spraying that, you can just see how thin the paint's gone on, which is really pleasing, because that means all this lovely detail, all this rivets, raised rivet detail and recessed rivet detail is coming out really nicely. The other thing is, by applying the camo over the hairspray, and particularly the aluminium, you just get, I don't know whether you can pick this up, but you get a very slight metallic look to some of the forward edges here of the camo, which is exactly what I was hoping would happen, which is great, because for me that just gives you that sense of metal rather than painted plastic, which is definitely what we're about. And also you get a couple of extra little things, so just little bits of wear and tear, little bits of imperfection here on the wing here, just here down at the seam line, at a panel line. Brilliant, exactly what will help to add to the overall weathered effect. So they're just little elements of the process which are working in your favour now, given that we want to create here quite a weathered looking aircraft that was operating from Sidi Barrani in Egypt during World War II. So we'll just remove these final details here, or these bits of masking, and then I'm just going to show you another little technique that's useful for making sure that we don't get any nasty visuals that can come when you put the decals on over a camo pattern, and then you find that you get a line right the way through the decal which runs the length of the demarcation. Okay. So, excuse me, so what I'm talking about is, so here you get these camo demarcation lines. In fact, they have gone on really smoothly using that technique of spraying straight down over the masking tape and not into one of the edges. It's actually really smooth, and I'm pleased with that. So we would probably get away with that. Having said that, taking some Micromesh cloth, our good old sort of 12,000 grade Micromesh cloth, it's a really good idea at this stage just to gently work the whole surface. This does a number of things. One is it kills any ridge, small ridge that might exist between those camo demarcation lines, which is the big part of the process. So a big part of the reason for doing it. Just one of the little doors there. That's nice, isn't it? That demarcation again worked a treat, didn't it, with the masking tape running over there. In fact, we'll just take those off now. Don't require those anymore. Not on any road. Again, just work the surface. Again, this slightly polishes the surface and is also bringing the model closer to being ready to have a gloss varnish applied to it so we can get the decals on. The other good thing is here, of course, this is all weathering, isn't it? This is all slowly and slightly weathering the surface to make it nearer and ever closer to that final effect that we'll be looking for, which is a long way off yet. But all of this is part of that process. Another thing this does, particularly with aircraft that have got these fabric surfaces, I don't know whether you can see that, just by micromeshing it, you just get that slight impression of the fabric effect showing through, which again is a really nice little feature, I think, because I do want that to be noticeable but not over the top on the finished model. So just by gently working the surface, you get some of that, which you can probably, or at least I hope you can, just about see in the film there. Okay, so I'm going to press on, finish the last little bit of this weathering, and then we'll move on to, and prep, and then we'll move on to the next stage. So back shortly and we can go from there. Okay, so it's probably 3 days, I think, since we did the hairspray application, and then we've as you know, we've now applied all the camo colours. So what I wanted to do now is to try and get some of that realistic chipping that you get of the paint that you get at the wing roots down here. So to that end, I've got a slightly stiffer brush here. This is just one of the old paintbrushes I've got that's been cut down, but it's got this Brussels. It's Brussels. Getting near Christmas, aren't we? God, that's fairly bizarre. Its bristles are quite firm and they're cut down, as you can see here, and that's ideal, I think, for working with the paint that's been on for a few days. Less stiff brush if we're using if we're doing the application quite a bit sooner than that. So okay, so plenty of water like we had before into the wing root, and then literally just work the surface until that water starts to penetrate through the acrylic paint. Just keep scrubbing away at the areas that you want to show the paint chipping through, and eventually it will start to go and you'll get that effect that we were looking for. So just keep working away, be patient, and it'll come. There we go. Suddenly it started. You can see that. Try to bring that in a bit closer. It's a bit hard with the light, I grant you. Try and move that light a little bit. Hopefully just to make that a bit easier for you to see. Just working that surface, and there you go, the paint's chipping really nicely. Definitely heavier down onto this inner wing route where the ground crew and air crews will be getting on board the aircraft, or just doing general maintenance, as you can see here, for the gun bays and so on. Yeah, it's coming nicely. So it's just about being patient. For me, there's no hurry here at all. I can sit here for a bit and do this, and when I'm happy with what's come, then I can stop. Every now and again you can just stop and check and see what you've done. Just move that around a little bit. If I can get some up here, not very much, but some, then that would be good. So if you do this sooner rather than later, so almost in real time, then in terms of painting and then this sort of chipping, then you can get a quicker effect. But I'm not too fussed about that, you know. For me, it's just about trying to build up what I'm after. So there we go. Look, that gives you an idea. Now, I don't know, 48 scale, a whole bunch of other factors. Probably don't want to go much further than that. But I think that's created a really nice effect. If I can just show you that. So we've got some good paint chipping there. Really looks like paint chipping to me. Particularly all these dome-headed rivets have had the tops taken off here, which is great. And you can just do as much or as little of that as you want. I just did a tiny test a minute ago on the right-hand side wing route, and it was starting to go here quite readily. So again, I'll do a little bit here too. Just working away very quickly, takes the paint off the top of those dome-headed rivets. And I think the door actually opened here on the right-hand side of the Hulk Hurricane. And so I think there's more likely to be wear and tear here than perhaps even on the other side, but hey ho. Just look at your references, have a look at your pictures and make any sort of decisions you want, really. Those little circular motions can work quite nicely. A little bit on the side here, been a bit stubborn on the side, I noticed, but hey ho. There you go. Whatever. We might use a slightly different technique to bring out a little bit of paint chipping around the door here. If that doesn't go, and sometimes it just doesn't, you know, it's just been on too long, and there you go, well, whoopie-doo. Well, we could use maybe one of the other techniques, like the sponge chipping technique, or we can, in fact, have a look at that. And in fact, I'll show you that later on. So what I'll do is I'll kind of stop with the door there, and we can do some of that later. But look, I mean, there we go. You've got the idea, haven't you? Personally, I like it. I think it's a really good way of putting on some reasonably extreme weathering, if that's what you want, if that's what you need. If you don't want it, then don't do it. It's as simple as that. But I think, given the field of operations, this would have had quite a lot of wear and tear. You know, extreme heat, you know, boots with sand all over them. I can't imagine a more abrasive surface or cause of this kind of chipping. So I think it's realistic and certainly works well for me. So I'm just going to have a little bit of a play with one or two of the other areas, maybe a little bit around the gun bay here, and then I'll come back and just show you how where we've got to in terms of this part of the process. And that's taken us quite a long way really from the start to this point, and already I think we've got quite a nice weathered used look already developing quite nicely on this model. So yeah, so far so good. Okay, welcome back. So we're going to apply the mottling now, and all I've done is mixed up some acrylic 70, the brick red colour, about the same mix we had before, perhaps just very slightly thinner than the 50-50. And what's quite a good little tactic is to use a bit of paper beforehand, just to do a tiny bit of practice and just see if you can get your paint flowing as you want. It's a bit of trial and error this. This is partly to be sure you've got the right consistency, the right air pressure and all that kind of stuff. It's just a bit of trial and error. As I said, it's worth playing around a little bit. I've had a little bit of a practice here already. Seems not too bad. Okay, so I think we'll give it a go. I'll just come in with the model and see where we go. Just little mini squiggles. Keep taking the airbrush off the aircraft, off the model, just to keep testing it, keep that flow coming. You get the idea, yeah? Just see how that kind of builds up. And my intention here is just to kind of go over and pretty much get them where I want them, and then come back and do a bit of tidying up to make sure that that they're kind of good enough really in the great scheme of things. So it's still a little bit speckly for me, so I'll just keep pegging away, finish off the camo, and then finish off the colour, and then come back and we can do some tidying up before we go on to look at the green. Hey, welcome back, Geoff Coughlin. So we've done the brick red mottling, that's all on, and now it's time for matte 30, the dark green acrylic. So we'll do that. So all I've done here is just mix it up, exactly the same as we've done previously. about this 50-50 kind of mix. Get a bit in the airbrush, and on with this testing again. A little bit of a test to make sure that it's spraying the way I want it to. Okay, it's pretty good actually, like that. So in for a penny and for a pound, straight in, I think. So it's just these random kind of squiggles. I think it's going quite well actually. That's all right so far. Just keep working away. Okay, so you get the idea. Let's come back and touch up a few areas. Very careful use of that trigger. I think that's the trick with this thing. It's interesting, but I think this green is spraying better than the brick red. No idea why. One of those things, really. But it's getting there. I mean, just already you can sort of see the effect, and I'm pleased with it. I think it's good. I think it's absolutely fine. As I said, there'll be a couple of little tips to fill in any bits you aren't happy with in terms of the aluminium, but we'll get to that in a bit. Just finish off adding this mottling. Sometimes if that happens and you're quick, you can just about get away with it. Suddenly get a bit of a squirt from the airbrush for no apparent reason, but actually it looks fine. Okay, so how are we looking? Okay, not bad. Oh, pretty pleased with it, really. A couple of areas just to touch up. Yeah, there we go. So that's pretty much the mottling done, which is good. And yeah, I'll just let that settle down for a bit, and then I'll come back and have a look and just see if we need to just touch up any of the aluminium bits. What I mean by that is just coming in and maybe just taking out any bits of overspray that you're not happy with. Now there is some, but I don't have an issue with that because I think it helps to tie the whole mottling thing in with the metal, and also tones down the metal a little bit, funnily enough, because I don't want it to be too stark in the great scheme of things. So there we are, that's it so far. We'll come back in a minute, and I'll just have a little bit of a play with the Duraluminium again, that all clad, and we'll just see if we need to touch up any odd bits. It'll just help to smooth out the finish a little bit and just to kind of refine it a bit. So that's coming next. This little technique is just about trying to take out any of the overspray if you're not happy with it, and it's really just trying to yeah, just I suppose add a bit of finesse really, I suppose, to the whole thing really. So this is the Duraluminium back again in the airbrush. We'll just come back in and any little areas it's just about toning it all back, really. That's about all it is. It doesn't really matter even if you get a little bit of overspray, just like we had there. It just adds a bit more weathering, to be honest, where the paint sort of faded out. But it is a bit tricky, this. Yeah, that's a bit better. There you go. Just going in and taking out a little bit of that overspray. So you just end up with a bit more refined kind of look to the whole thing, really. So that's about it, really. I don't think you need to do an awful lot more, to be fair. Just looking along the edge there, just a tiny bit here. Okay, the risk of sort of messing it up, which you don't want to do, probably kind of done enough. I think probably done enough with that. So there we go. I mean, overall, I'm happy with it. I'm happy with the metallic finish. I'm happy with the camo. The chipping's good. So all we need to do now is just leave that and probably leave it overnight now, I think. Given how the mottling's happened in terms of how the effect that it's created, personally, I don't think there's a lot of a need to start chipping away at that as well. So I'm just going to leave that. It's quite subtle, as it turns out, and I'm just going to leave that as it is. I think it's perfectly fine as is. And then we'll be on with the gloss varnish, and then we can get some decals on, which would be great.